Hi, this is Brian from Street Snappers, and in today's video we're going to take a look at some of the entries from this month's Street Snappers Club challenge. The subject this month was framing, which can be a really useful tool in street photography that draws the eye of the viewer into a specific part of the image. In case you're new to my channel, all of the images you're about to see were submitted to the Street Snappers Club, which is a terrific community of enthusiastic street photographers who have all been on one of my workshops. These challenges are designed to help hone and develop particular skills and give photographers a more complete, rounded toolbox to improve their images. Each month I pick out a few of my favourite images, or those that I think would benefit from a little bit of constructive feedback. So, feedback. Feedback's a really important part of how we develop as photographers, but I'm sorry to say that quality feedback is often hard to come by, and we've all seen the sort of feedback we get on social media, which ranges from meaningless emojis to phrases like awesome capture. Okay, they can be flattering, but they don't really help you. So let's dive straight in and look at some of this month's contenders. So let's kick off this month's critique with this shot from Wendy Chalk. And I was with Wendy in Venice on a workshop when she shot this in February this year. And it was around 7 AM, if I remember correctly. During the carnival weeks, Venice is awash with people in costume. And I think we all get pretty tired of seeing the same old costume shots time and time again. And sure, they can make a pretty picture, but it's not really street photography. And it's good to see something a bit different. And I like Wendy's approach here. This is more of a behind the scenes shot, maybe shot with a hint of irony. I don't know. When we're looking at an image like this, we're looking for maybe one small thing which elevates it to something a little more interesting. It needn't be anything major, just something that causes you to stop and look a little more closely. And in this case, it's the slightly awkward pose of the woman. Had she been upright and just standing normally, the image would have maybe just been a little bit more ordinary. So this is all about framing, and the concept of framing works pretty well here, with the image divided up into two frames, and then we have two internal frames, which is those shuttered doors. Wendy's managed to get all the horizontal and vertical lines reasonably straight. I've got to say that wonky lines do irk me a little. And I think it's a good decision here to convert this to black and white. And I do think that black and white works particularly well in Venice, and it just adds to the sort of timeless vibe. So all in all, this is a good shot. There isn't really a huge amount to criticise here. I think I might be inclined to eliminate a little bit of the steps at the bottom, but hey, no big deal. It's a nice shot. It's a different shot, which I think is really important. And it gets across the framing thing. So thank you, Wendy. That's most definitely a keeper. Here we have quite a different sort of image from Ramond Davies. And I like the thinking behind this. This is kind of classic street photography. I don't know whether this was planned, in that Ramond waited for the right subject to come into shot, the fishing technique where you put the bait on your line, you cast a line and wait for the fish to come. So whether he waited for the right person to come into shot here, or it was just a quick fire, lucky moment, I don't know, but it works for me. There's always a place for humour in street photography, and it works pretty well here, but without being too cliched. The framing works well, the guy is nicely framed within the heart on the window, and then you've got the sign on the window that says 100% sweet, and that sort of completes the picture. Then you've got the little girl's face bottom right, and that adds another layer of interest. I'm guessing Ramond struggled a little bit with the lighting conditions here, and this is really quite contrasty, probably too much so. But yeah, I think he probably did quite well. I'm assuming it was pretty dark and there wasn't a lot of exposure headroom without blowing the highlights. Maybe the colours are also a little bit oversaturated. I'd be inclined to just bring those down a little bit. You could bring the rest of the colours down whilst maintaining the red if you were editing this in RAW. But I don't know whether this was RAW or a JPEG. But none of those things detract from what is a fun image, and I think a good illustration of the whole concept of framing. So thank you, Raymond, well done. Another colour image here, and it's this atmospheric shot from Gary Williams, which I believe he shot in India last month. So this is maybe more travel than street photography, but it still ticks a lot of boxes for me. First of all, it utilises this concept of framing really well, so it hits the brief. And I think the framing here really emphasises that very small space the guy appears to be working in. So from the outer edge of the frame itself, the image itself, to the frame of the doorway, right through to the frame created by the back wall, your eye is drawn through the image front to back, and I like that. It's a good thing that we can use in our photography. I love the muted colour palette here, and I'm really pleased Gary wasn't tempted to convert this to black and white, as I know a lot of people would have been. My only real criticism, and this isn't a deal breaker, is the lighting. And I'd like to see just a little bit more light on the guy, specifically his face and hands. And I think this would have the added benefit of just making him stand out from the background a little more, maybe just giving it a little more depth and a little bit more of a 3D quality. But it's a great shot. I love that green in the back there. I love the bare bulb. It's a great shot, and I'd be pleased to have taken this myself. So good work, Gary, and thanks for putting it in. Now to another black and white shot, and I love this image from Muir. This works really well, and your eye is drawn straight to that man's face, and I just love his expression. Who is this guy? What's he doing? What's he thinking? I do like pictures that ask me questions, and I can't really work out what's going on here. And that's not a criticism, by the way, but I just want to know what is the scene? What is the story? Is this guy a reflection in a mirrored window? Is he inside somewhere? He looks almost the clarity is too good for it to be a reflection. And I don't know. I'm interested to know. Another thing about this image that strikes me is the way that Brian's used layers. And by layers, I don't mean that he's done something tricksy in Photoshop, but he's used that very powerful technique of using planes of interest from front to back throughout the frame to add depth. So in this case, the main layers are the foreground, which is the window frame and the brickwork. Then you've got the guy himself, the middle ground layer, and he is the primary layer in this case. And then you've got the background layer, those reflections in the window, the reflections of the lines and the architecture in the background. It all really works, and it gives you a real sense of volume and depth. Compositionally, I find the brickwork on the left and to the bottom of this frame a little bit overbearing, and I'd be inclined to crop some of it out, or maybe darken it a little. I think I'd crop it on balance. And I think just a small amount of cropping would just add some impact to this shot. But other than that, I think it's a cracker, absolute cracker. I love the tones, I love the clarity. Very little to criticise. Great work, Brian. Thank you. Here we have another monochrome image, and this is from Neil Johansson, who I know produces a lot of great work in that medium, and I think Neil is pretty good with his black and white. So in this shot, there's a dark, almost somber mood here with those heavy clouds, the imposing black frame, that solitary silhouetted figure with his dog. So conceptually, I like this, and I think the idea works. It's a dark image with notions of solitude and bleakness, maybe a little hint of menace as well, and you could think that you as the viewer or the photographer or the person standing behind that frame could be hiding, watching, waiting. Who knows? Again, it raises questions, which is a good thing. To be critical, the drain pipe on the left is a slight irritation for me. It's a bit too distracting and your eye keeps being drawn to it. Had that been something interesting, it wouldn't necessarily have been a big deal, but I find it a distraction. And it doesn't add anything to the frame. If we have something that's sort of dominant and a distraction, it needs to add something, and that drain pipe doesn't. But I played with this image a little bit, and I just rotated the frame anti-clockwise just by about 1 degree to straighten up that drain pipe, and it just became a little bit more acceptable. So it just shows that by doing tiny things to an image, we can improve them, and that really did improve it. Having said that, I'd still, as I say, darken it down a little bit. But I do like the way Neil's used the technique of framing here to good effect, and I'd say it's just about a keeper. So well done, Neil, and many thanks. Last but not least, we're going to finish with this very moody shot from Sam Beech. And it's another shot this month from India, this time in black and white. And it's a great example of how the frame can draw the viewer's eye into the image. And it's kind of like looking through a tunnel, and the light at the end of the tunnel, the point of interest is that boy just sitting there. I don't know if he's reading, looking at a phone, sitting there being miserable, having a quiet moment, whatever. We don't know, but it kind of asks you questions. So there's quite an interesting, potentially quite an interesting narrative element to this image. Again, possibly more travel than street photography. Yeah, I think it is. It is in the margins of street photography, so fine, acceptable, but maybe a little bit more travel. But I do like the composition. There's just enough of that black outer frame, though I think any more would have been too much. And I like the way that Sam has kept the two main vertical lines straight, but has allowed that horizontal line at the top to just be on an incline, to be a little bit wonky. And this almost imperfection adds to the feeling of looking in on what is quite an intimate space. I think the conversion to black and white works particularly well here, although I'm quite intrigued to know what colour that wall was and what the whole thing would look like in colour. There's the sort of highlight below the boy's feet, that block of white. I'd probably just bring that down a little bit. The highlight's a little bit too bright for me, but no big deal. Nice range of tones, nice textures in the back on that wall. So this is a great image, and I suspect it's one that would work well as a part of a bigger body of work. And if Sam has, if he's put together a project or a collection of images from this India trip, I'd really be keen to see them. So well done, Sam. It's a great shot, and it's my top pick for this month. Well, I hope you enjoyed looking through some of those images and you found something useful in taking a close look at some project-driven street photography. Going out to shoot with a particular idea, specific idea in mind, okay, it's not for everyone, but it can help give you a real sense of purpose and allow a sense of achievement in your street photography. For more thoughts on the value of projects in street photography, check out my recent video on the subject. There's a link in the description box below. Well, that's about it. Huge thanks to everyone who submitted images. I'm consistently amazed at the increasingly high standards that we see in the StreetSnappers Club, and I can't wait to see what you've all got in store for us next month. If you'd like to see more monthly critiques, as well as videos with street photography tips, tutorials and insights, do subscribe to the StreetSnappers channel. And I'm always interested to hear your thoughts, whether about these particular images or my street photography videos in general, and I welcome any feedback and comments in the box below. I always try to respond to everybody's comments. If you like the video, please click like. If you'd like to learn more about street photography, or you're interested in coming in one of my workshops, check out streetsnappers.com. Again, the link is in the box below. So that's it, folks. Bye for now. Please stay safe out there, and I'll see you next time.